The Spin-off Podcast Network.
Are you making the most of your KiwiSaver investment? Generate is an award-winning KiwiSaver provider with a track record of strong long-term performance. Making a smart decision now could add tens of thousands of dollars by the time you reach retirement. Book a no-obligation chat with a Generate KiwiSaver advisor today at generatekiwisaver.co.nz/get-advice. A copy of the product disclosure statement is available at generatekiwisaver.co.nz. The issuer of the scheme is Generate Investment Management Limited, and of course, past performance does not guarantee future returns.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Kia ora tātou, this is Toby Manhire with another episode of your friendly local politics podcast, Gone by Lunchtime. What you're about to hear is part of the Gone by Lunchtime Megapod, a 12-hour epic event recorded on September 20 at Spin-off HQ. Enjoy. Tēnā koutou katoa, this is the Election Megapod 2023. I'm Toby Manhire. Later this hour, we'll be joined by Robert Patman from Otago University. He'll be talking about the foreign policy issues that we're not talking about but should be talking about in this campaign. But first, Erica Stanford, National MP, is with us. Hi, Erica.
Hello. Thanks
for coming in.
Me.
I won't quiz you about foreign policy. I think that's probably
Excellent.
If you have any, overwhelming thoughts about foreign policy, you're welcome to share them. I'm asking everybody who comes in to this ridiculous day-long podcast to do three things. The first of that is to have a guess, to go in to potentially win a box of chocolate fish, to guess what the turnout will be on October 14.
From the conversations I've had on doorsteps around the country, because we're doing a lot of door knocking with our candidates, I think the turnout is going to be quite low.
Right.
I think there are a number of left-wing voters, Labour voters, that are disillusioned. They don't want to vote for Labour, that's what I'm hearing. But they don't know what to do, and they've actually said to us, we're just not going to vote. So my pick is something down around that sort of 74 mark. So I'll hit, let's say 74.3.
74.3. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite low, which is unfortunate because you want people to participate in the democratic process. But I think there are a lot of disillusioned people out there who feel very let down.
So you say to them, when you say it's important that you vote, you should vote for Labour. Why don't you just go and vote for Labour?
No, I tell them, well, you should have you considered National? And then I give them my pitch on the doorstep.
Next question. Political TV show. I don't know if you're a fan of West Wing or House of Cards or Veep or any of those sorts of that world of quite often, sado politicians and political media like myself do consume those things. If you had to choose one to take to a desert island, which would you choose?
I really liked House of Cards. I watched that.
The American one?
The American one. But I, to be honest, I tend not to watch them, and I'll tell you why. And my husband loves them. He's listening, and he'll be laughing. I find them really stressful. With this job, I like to come home and watch just mind-numbingly, easy reality TV rubbish. Yeah. Because otherwise, it's just too stressful. Yeah. And I just want to relax, and so I don't tend to watch as much. But we used to watch House of Cards. I
always remember Jamie Lee Ross, whose name may be familiar to you, from another epoch. Wrote a piece. I commissioned Jamie Lee Ross to write a piece when he was just a sort of a whippersnapper National MP. He went to the Republican National Convention and he wrote in the piece, I can't remember the exact wording, but something about how it was so exciting and it made him feel like House of Cards. And it's kind of, I think there is a danger, without wanting to necessarily do psychoanalysis on Jamie Lee Ross, there is a danger of believing that stuff's real.
And it's so not. It is so not. It's not like that at all.
Would it be quite boring, a TV show, actually, about the halls of Parliament?
No, that's not true. There are some things, and we've talked about this in previous times you and I have chatted about the dramas, but it's certainly nothing like it is on House of Cards. I mean, all of that underhanded scheming and trying to bring people down and that stuff, that just doesn't happen. But of course things explode and there's drama and there's excitement, but it's not quite as Machiavellian, I think, as its House of Cards.
Yeah. It's more often, they're quite usually, not always, cock-uppers more often to blame than conspiracy. Is that your experience in the world of politics? Yeah. Third question, we're doing a mojo meter inspired by your leader, Christopher Luxon, who likes talking about mojo. He's talked a lot about New Zealand having lost its mojo, and he's doing everything he can out there to go and find it again. He's, travelling up and down the country, dirt tracks, beaches, looking for that mojo, to reinstate that mojo. This is a scientific exercise we're conducting, asking everyone to describe their own level of mojo on a scale of 0, no mojo, all gone mojo. This is just your personal at this moment. 10, full mojo. Where are you on that?
We are,
You
certainly,
personally?
I'm 10 mojo
10.
at the moment.
You're 10 mojo.
Honestly, on Monday I was in South Canterbury, yesterday I was in Nelson, tonight I'm in Invercargill. We are go, go, go. We're not sitting back thinking that this is just going to land in our laps. We're having to work so hard, and you have to have mojo to be able to do that.
Okay.
Writing policy, doing public meetings,
So does that mean
full
that Christopher Luxon is wrong? There's lots of mojo in the country.
Well, he's got lots of
just in the
mojo,
national
and it's
cabinet?
infectious.
Okay.
Right? So he's sort of
He's going
spread
to
his mojo to us.
single-handedly renew the mojo.
Maybe that's
He's just
what
a
he's
mojo
planning.
machine. He's like a fire hose of mojo.
Well, you've seen him on the election campaign. He is the ultimate energizer bunny.
He is,
I don't know
about
how
it.
he does it, because I know he's in bed well after midnight. I know he's up at 4:30 in the morning.
Be honest, did you know that he was going to be like that? Because I think he's been really impressive. He took to it like a duck to water in terms of obviously there are some areas where he's stronger than others, but in terms of that kind of stuff, which is not everyone can do, I'd be terrible at it. Going around and just sort of beaming and enjoying, in the way that John Key did, for example, really enjoying those interactions with people. Did you expect that, or have you been surprised?
I did. I mean, I before he was the leader, and in his very early days as leader, I spent lots of time with him on visits and out talking to people.
Yeah.
He is, you can never get him away from people. We'd go to a cafe, and we've lost Luxon. Where is he? He's out the back talking to the chefs, and we're always late because he just can't stop chatting with people. It's infectious. He's, we saw that very early on, and it's just kind of ramped up a level. He loves talking to people, he loves interacting, and he's full of energy, and he doesn't need much sleep, which I can't say the same for myself.
No, he's got some crazy regime of like 5 a.m. starts and midnight to bed or whatever. Yeah. It's because he's a very clean living soul. That's the answer.
He drinks some Pepsi Max.
Oh, he
Don't
drinks
think
too
he's
much
too
Pepsi.
clean
Okay,
living.
all
He's
right.
not perfect.
Okay, that's
I've
edgy.
got the Coke
Edgy.
Zero. Yeah, I've got the Coke Zero addiction. He's got the Pepsi Max edition.
Did you watch the debate last night?
I didn't. I was in a public meeting in Nelson, and then we had a dinner, so I've missed it. I haven't managed to catch up today, but I've seen some snippets.
Yeah. What were you doing in Nelson?
I did some school visits. I did a boxing class with Victory Boxing, who take at-risk kids and do boxing classes with them, amongst a lot of other stuff. And we spent an hour. It was billed to me as, hey, we're just going to get a photo op. And I did a full hour session of skipping and press-ups and running and boxing with these 11 and 12-year-olds. And then we did a public meeting and a dinner. So full-on day.
How is your interactions with teachers? Because, broadly speaking, the teaching community is tend to vote Labour, not all of them. How is that? How have those? Have you been having some difficult conversations? Have you been trying to make the case for the what do you call your package? It's got some alliterative title.
Teaching the Basics Brilliantly and National's Literacy Guarantee.
Yeah. How's that going?
Really good, actually. And of course, look, I have been on a tour of this country, and I have been into, I can't even count, so many schools, so many staff rooms, so many principals' offices, talking to them about our policy, and Principals Federation meetings and groups of principals all over the country. And the feedback is really good, because a lot of what we're doing is just evidence-based stuff. A lot of schools are doing it already, but we want it to be consistent. And when I get out there and talk to them and go, this isn't scary, this isn't me coming in and flipping the table and doing a 180-degree handbrake turn, this is sensible, evidence-based best practice, and we're going to put some funding behind it in terms of our structured literacy policy. And it's going down really well.
And the phonics thing, which is such I've got school-age children, and I don't know, right? But, there is an argument that says let the schools use the system that they think works best for the children. That would seem to be quite a National Party approach. Let them decide. Devolve that responsibility. So why not allow that to continue happening?
Well, because we've been doing that, and it hasn't worked. We have been down a path of the balanced literacy approach, which sounds wonderful. Great, it's got some balance.
It's got B in it. You'd like to bring back brilliant balance better.
Yeah, no. But it is, look, it's not the best way to teach kids to read. It is teaching our kids the habits of poor readers. Look at the picture, guess the word, have a think about the context, look at the first letter. Those are the habits of poor readers, and that's what we've been doing for so long. And it came out of New Zealand. It was research that was done here in New Zealand in the 60s before we knew how the brain learnt to read. But we now know how the brain learns to read through hundreds and hundreds of cognitive studies. We know that we can get 95% of kids reading proficiently by year 3 if we do it using structured literacy. It's already done in a number of schools. The international evidence, our own local evidence suggests it's the best way. If we want to turn around things really quickly, structured literacy and an explicit way of teaching phonics and literacy is absolutely the way to go. And I take your point. National are not normally the party of mandating things, but within that policy we've said, okay, we're going to mandate structured literacy, but you can choose your provider. You can choose the decodable books from any source you like, and we will fully fund that. So there is a lot of choice in there, but actually we don't have time to muck around. 80% of the people in our prisons are basically illiterate. And Andrew Beecroft the other day said 80% of the kids doing RAM raids have very low levels of literacy. He said our biggest crime-fighting tool is good literacy in schools, and I agree with him. And I'm not willing to muck around any longer when I know the evidence is clear.
The ACT Party has its sights on education, some commentators say. They have some strong views. It's something that fuels David Seymour quite strongly. He's, in terms of charter schools particularly. Is there part of you that is conscious that you've put together your policy package, you're up there, you're ready to go, and then it's something that could, just by the nature of MMP, be like, sorry, Erica, but this is the policy now for education?
Of course. I mean, that can always happen. But I've been in a debate recently with David Seymour where he said he's got no interest in the education portfolio.
Oh, really? Okay.
So he said that at the Auckland Primary Principals Association debate recently when I was sitting there with Jan.
Did they get a round of applause?
I think it was more of a sigh of relief. So look, he said that publicly. So, I would love nothing more to be in that portfolio.
Right.
Of course, that decision is up to Christopher Luxon.
Yeah.
We'll find out, if we are successful at a later time.
I'm Toby Manhire, and this is Juggernaut, the story of the Fourth Labour government, a podcast in 6 parts.
Doesn't give my opponents much time to run up to an election, does it?
This nation is at risk.
What do you think you're up to now, you perverted little liar?
I could smell the uranium on it as you lean towards it.
There's a radical overhaul in the history of New Zealand's administration.
Juggernaut, the story of the Fourth Labour government, made with the support of New Zealand On Air. Listen now on The Spin-Off or wherever you get your podcasts.
Are you curious about how business can be better? I'm Simon Pound, and I host Business is Boring, a podcast where I cordial with some of the most interesting people in entrepreneurship, commerce, and making things happen. Tune in to Business is Boring every Tuesday, brought to you by the Spin-Off Podcast Network in partnership with Spark Business Lab.
The last time you were in this building, I think, was when we had a candidate diary reunion. It was a really special evening, I thought, and we had, it's because the backstory to it was that in 2017, back in the distant mists of time, we ran a series on the Spin-Off with first-time candidates for Parliament. It was Erica Stanford, it was Chloe Swarbrick, and it was Kerry Allen, all of whom, prospered, did incredibly well. Afterwards, I'm not saying there's a link between those things. It was more that we sought advice on who might be good people to bring in. Now, since we had that evening, Kerry Allen has quit politics, and she obviously had a tumultuous time. We all know what happened. We don't need to necessarily retread all of that. But in light of what happened there, some of the discussion we had about the daily reality of political parliamentary life, has that made you must have reflected on all that more in the aftermath?
Yes. You have to look after yourself. And it is, especially at the moment, it is, so busy and so full on. But the job is very, very demanding. And it is high levels of stress because you are constantly not only trying to do your work, but constantly worrying about what the media are trying to get at you on and balancing a whole lot of things and trying to say the right thing and not the wrong thing. It is very stressful, and you do need to look after yourself. But I think you also need to go into politics knowing what potential issues you might have, and make sure that you take care of yourself around that. Like, if you do, look, and I have actually not said this publicly before, but I struggled with depression in my 20s. I was on antidepressants before I had children for about 8 years. So I know my limitations, and I know when I'm starting to feel a bit rubbish, and I know how to try and get over that. And I've got an amazing supportive husband. So you do need to know your limitations, your trigger points, and know when to step back and take a breath and what you need to do to right yourself. And I mean, most people struggle from time to time with different things, but it's just making sure you identify those bits and when they might flare up and take care of yourself, especially in this role.
And most people either have experience of that personally, or they have a friend, family, or whatever. But also, most of us don't work in the Beltway. It's really hard. So if you know your trigger points, that's great. How does that work when you've got officials, colleagues, public, media, all that pressure coming in? That must be incredibly hard to pull the cord.
It is, and I don't know all the details around Carrie Allen, but obviously she was an extremely high-profile job as a minister with many portfolios, and that pressure would have been huge. I mean, I'm just an opposition MP trying to do my best. The spotlight on us is nothing like what would have been on her, and so as much as I say, we've got to look at your trigger points and make sure that you look after yourself. It is going to step up a whole nother level for those people going into being new ministers. It really is. So, if we are successful and I do happen to become a minister, I will talk to you again in 12 months and let you know how it's going.
Yeah. Again, none of this is to take anything for granted. But are there mechanisms put in place, whether it's through parliamentary service, whether it's through the party, because it is. You're right. I mean, it will. If it's hell of a busy now, but that's only gonna compound if you become a member of cabinet.
Yeah, well, at the moment we've got an incredibly supportive caucus, and that's actually led by Christopher Luxon. He does a great job in making sure that we get together once a block, that we are sitting together, having a drink, de-stressing, using each other to share our issues and problems with, and have a laugh and de-stress. So he's made sure that we do that, and we all look after each other. And there are things through parliamentary service as well that you can get counselling sessions, and you can get help through parliamentary services should you need it.
Have you done a performance review with him? He's doing performance. Have you had one of those?
Yes, I sit down with Christopher Luxon regularly.
But formally, is it like, this is the performance review? In your diary? And he goes through your KPIs? KPIs though, isn't it? Well,
yeah, it's not super formal. He's a bit more casual with me. I don't know what others are like.
Right.
But we sit down very regularly. What are you working on? What are your plans? Here's where I need you to focus. At one point, he sort of said to me, Erica, you're great on immigration. I need you to take your foot off that accelerator and put it on education. So he's always been very clear with the outcomes that he wants us to get. And then I catch up with him every couple of weeks just to go through how things are going and the policy that I'm working on to make sure it aligns with his vision. So it's not super formal and stressful, but it's just sort of this ongoing dialogue. But he's very clear about where he wants us to go. And that's been quite different and quite refreshing.
I think you've described yourself as tealy. You're a tealy blue, a member of the Blue Greens, I'm assuming.
Yes.
How do you feel about where your party is now? Todd Moller, who was sort of departed on in a cloud of adoration from across the house, really. It was quite moving to watch. Do you feel as though are you comfortable with where your party is on climate change? It seems to have slipped lately.
I don't agree. And I also look at some of our candidates coming through. There are some incredibly intelligent blue-green candidates who will be in the National Caucus after Election Day. So I think if I look at the future of our party and our blue-green caucus, I'm buoyed by that. But also when I look at our policy, I mean, I always say that National are the party of the practical environmentalists. Some of the stuff that we're doing is really smart and targeted. I'm I'm really happy with Judith's tech policy around gene editing. You know what? We can halve the cow herd, or we can invest in research and actually do that research here to be world leaders in how to reduce our agricultural emissions, because no other country in the world is even looking at that. They're too busy going, how do we move away from coal to gas? So we've got some advantages that we can leverage. And so when you look at our policy, it's smart policy. And not just slogans. I mean, we've seen that in the last 6 years from this government. Oh, climate change is Jacinda's nuclear-free moment. Well, guess what? In her first term, emissions went up. We're importing more dirty coal apart from the last 6 months than we ever have. And the only reason the last 6 months have gone down is because the lakes have been full. So, actually we're not worried about slogans. We're worried about what works, what investment is to put into the right place.
Do you feel genuinely comfortable about reopening, offshore gas drilling?
Yeah, I do.
Really?
Yep, absolutely. Well, when the lakes are low, the wind's not blowing, and the sun's not shining, what do? We can keep importing dirty Indonesian coal, or we can do the thing, we can turn that tap on when we need to supplement our renewables with something that has got half of the emissions of dirty coal. Now, look, do we want to be doing that all the time? No. And one of our policies, you would have seen, is doubling our renewable energy sources. So while we're doing that, we are always going to need something that we can turn on, and natural gas is that alternative. It's better than the coal we've been burning while we get ourselves up to more renewables.
Audrey Young, the doyen of the Press Gallery, wrote recently a piece about future leadership configurations, in which she mentioned a Willis Stanford ticket. Now, I'm not asking you about that. So forget that. And then she said, but that's not possible, of course, because you can't have two women. I'm paraphrasing. Maybe she didn't say that. She said it's unpalatable. And then Anna Rafferty-Connor, one of my colleagues, wrote a piece in which she said, this is what day and age we live in. Would you like to think, and this is not a question about you, so let's not try and pretend that this is a leadership spill. Do you think that New Zealand would be ready for a woman Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister?
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind. I was quite shocked to read what Audrey wrote, actually. I 100% disagree. I think that even the National Party are perfectly capable of having two women, and we would consider it's not something we would rule out. And I think the public are ready for it, quite frankly.
And so you don't get any sense when you're out on the campaign trail or in your inbox that there remains a kind of a sexism at large in New Zealand that would make
I don't see it at all. I don't see it. And I get asked this quite a bit, a woman more targeted in politics, and is it worse for you? And I can only speak from my experience, but I don't see that.
But then when we did have that evening as well, I remember that Chloe and Kiri relayed some experiences to you, and you went, oh.
Actually, I thought of a couple. But since then, I've actually, because I've thought about it more deeply, because I got asked recently in a woman's interview, and I had to think about it in advance. And I thought, yes, I do get some nasty things, her hair's too long and whatever. And I thought, well, so do the guys. I mean, Andrew Little gets called Angry Andy. My hashtag on Twitter is Mean Girl Stanford.
I think he got called Angry Andy by the National Party, didn't he?
But everyone calls him Angry Andy now. Like, we all get stuff, right? Everyone gets labelled with something. From my perspective, and I can't speak for all women, I don't think what I get is any worse than what the guys get, actually.
Okay.
And I don't tend to dwell on it. I just, forge ahead, right?
The education is obviously a passion. I know you're not tertiary education, are you? You've got the separate spokesperson, but the universities, just quickly on that, are in a state.
Yes,
you talk to anyone who they're sort of pleading for more money to get them through this period as they rebuild post-COVID. What's National's position on that? Is National going to help universities with money?
You won't have long to wait before we announce some policy around helping our tertiary sector. So that is something that's coming.
Okay.
And I've had a hand in that. So from both perspectives, from immigration and education. So we are very aware that the sector is really struggling. And frankly, when I look at what the government have done to the international student market over the last 6 years, we shouldn't be surprised at where we're at.
Well, that's what
done
COVID did that to the international student market, didn't it?
Well, why is it that Australia and Canada are back to pre-pandemic student numbers, and if we're lucky at half? And they've been back for a long time.
And do you think that's an immigration shortcoming?
There is an immigration. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. These guys absolutely went into immigration after the pandemic and cut out a whole lot of stuff that attracts students to come to New Zealand. Now, the Aussies, man, they're smart. Right from early last year, when we still had our borders closed, they went, right, we want students back. And they could see that our borders were closed. And they were like, right, awesome. We will take all of your international students. And you know what? They did. They were smart. They had welcoming policies. It used to be our fourth biggest export earner. And our universities were doing well, our polytechnics were doing well. And that has all disappeared because of the specific immigration policies that this government put in place to make it much harder for international students to choose New Zealand. Because they literally go Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the UK, and they list all of the stuff that we offer, and they're not choosing us.
I think you appeared on a lot of people's radars in the immigration portfolio first when you pushed quite hard and there's the emerging out of COVID period. Is that something that gets fire in your belly as well as education? Is immigration something you get? Are you going to be in there saying I want that portfolio too? If the cards fall that way.
Well, look, I love the immigration portfolio. I asked for it. I mean, I love education as well. Immigration, I love daughter of an immigrant, and I could see how important it was going to be. And when you look at our birth rate and our ageing population and how things look in the future structurally for New Zealand, immigration is going to be vital. 2/3 of our population growth will come from immigration in the future. We have a birth rate at the moment of 1.6. To remain stable, it needs to be 2.1. So, you do the math. We are going to rely on them more and more. So our immigration settings are vitally important. And you need someone who understands immigration law, who understands how migrants work and what they want from policy settings, how businesses work, what the country needs, and tied in with infrastructure. You need someone who understands all that. And I think in the last 6 years we've had a number of ministers who didn't get it, and things haven't been going well. So, yes, I am really passionate about that as well. But I certainly won't be going to Luxon telling him what I want, because I think he probably knows, but also he makes those decisions.
Sure, yeah. But you reckon you could manage to take both of those? Quite big portfolios.
They are, and he will make that call.
A listener writes in to say, Erica at university was essentially undefeated and unbeatable at the jug sculls. Would you care to comment?
It's one of my greatest achievements in life. Yeah, 3 years open girls jug scull champion.
Wow.
Yeah, those are the good old days when you used to be able to do boat races in the quad. Okay. Can't do that anymore. We've gone all woke.
Is that not something that's happening in National Caucus meetings?
No, I'm too old. I can't do it anymore.
Erica versus Simeon in the boat races?
I would kick his butt.
Pay money to watch that.
Sub 4 second jugs in my heyday.
Simeon, if you want to come in, the invitation is open. I think he was thinking about it. I don't think we anyway. Simeon, if you're listening, come on in. I promise not to make you drink a jug of beer, but we will chat. Erica, thanks so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. Good luck with the rest of the campaign, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you very much for having me.
This is the Spin-Off 2023, Gone by Lunchtime, Election Megapod. We're doing fine. We'll be back soon. Thanks for listening. There's plenty more where this came from on your Gone by Lunchtime feed. Thanks to Jane, Te Aihe and Samuel and the rest of the team at the Spin-Off for making the Megapod happen.
Kia ora, I'm Duncan Grieve, founder of The Spin-Off. You can help us keep all of The Spin-Off's award-winning journalism free for everybody by becoming a member today at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
Kia ora e te iwi, Te Aihe Butler here, podcast manager at The Spin-Off. If you enjoy listening to our podcasts, consider supporting our mahi by signing up to become a Spin-Off member at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
The Spin-Off Podcast Network.